back for Arfield. 1-0 Burnley. Scott Arfield. He's been threatening that recently. And all the Burnley players run to the Darwin end.
Burnley win the next ball. Here's Rory now. On the outside. Decent.
Barnes! He got it! Ashley Barnes with it! What a cross from Rory! And there was Ashley Barnes! And Burnley leading the derby.
Knocks it quickly. Finds Benson in space at the byline. Can Burnley get a goal here? Back for Brownell. Saved by the keeper!
Burnley won it to the end! That is magnificent! They deserve that! He's on fire at the minute. 3-0 Burnley. It's Nathan Teller's day. And Burnley are 3 up here. Fantastic derby.
Here's Benson. Can he go on the outside? Comes inside. Top shot.
Oh, the goal. Manuel Benson once more. That is top class. Burnley have done it. Fantastic. Clarets deserve the championship title. They've been the best side throughout the campaign. Burnley have won the second tier. What a fantastic achievement. The players have been magnificent.
Yes, hello everybody, welcome along to the latest episode of the Turfcast podcast pre-game show with me, Joe Redmond, ahead of this weekend's game against Bournemouth at Turf Moor. Sunday, 1 o'clock I think it is. I know it's definitely Sunday, pretty certain. John's nodding, so that's all the confirmation I need. It's part of Super Sunday, which I do find quite amusing. I don't think many people are going to, and I'm speaking as a Burnley fan, are going to want to watch Burnley against Bournemouth. I don't think many Burnley fans are going to want to watch with the way the season has gone so far. But you will recognise John, who's from Cherry's Red Armour. He was on earlier in the season. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, doing good. Thanks. Thanks for having me on again. Yeah, it's been a while, but yeah,
it's been a while. Yeah, it's quite. We were just talking off air. It's quite funny actually because obviously I don't know how many of you watched a relegation rivals show that me, John, a Sheffield United fan called Jimmy, and a Luton fan, I think it was Ollie, excuse me, did. And we're all debating about who could go down and stuff. And obviously, every single one of us are quietly confident that our own team would get out of it. Now, you won't. If you find me a Burnley fan who thinks we're going to get out of it, I'll show you somebody who's deluded, because it's just not going to happen. And John has honestly, genuinely just, well, not John himself, but Bournemouth has just flown away to the point where I would just set off air. I could probably think of 6 or 7 or even 8 teams that I choose to go down before Bournemouth. But I am surprised to see that you're 14th. I did think you're a little bit higher than that, but 28 points, that's probably going to be enough already to stay up. So, yeah, obviously, season's gone pretty well then, John, I suppose, for what your ambitions would have been at the start of the season. I'm guessing it would have probably been stay up number 1 and then kick on if you can. And obviously, it's looking like you're going to stay up, isn't it?
Yeah, I think expectations sort of have rose and dipped through the season. It was at the start bringing in a new manager, taking, somewhat unceremoniously saying goodbye to Gary O'Neill and bringing in the new manager, Iraola, and seeing how the team was starting to look in pre-season. There was a lot of optimism amongst fans and those that are, the tactics crowd on YouTube were very much saying Iraola could bring something special to Bournemouth and they could be maybe pushing for a top half finish. I didn't buy that personally, but I did think that 13th was a realistic expectation. And then obviously, when we last spoke, we'd gone first 9 games in the season with 3 points without a win. And it was a case of, is the manager going to get sacked? That's the outside expectations was, wow, has he done that bad? They're going to change manager and they're going to go back to whatever they were doing before, or and then it was just okay, just let's try and stay up. That's the most we can do. Go on this fantastic winning streak and where we reach a point where we were the form team in the country, or form team in the league anyway, and then it's sort of dialed back again because we are without a league win in 2024 currently. And that's what's seen us drop a few places back, a few poor performances. And it's sort of been what could have been a top half finish is now very much the fans are probably sort of like, okay, I think we all think we're safe in all likelihood. No one's really looking over their shoulder, particularly when you look at Everton and Forest in the likelihood that they're going to drop some more points as well. And so it's sort of a case like, okay, we've probably stabilized now. Let's just see through the rest of the season. And then icing on the cake is maybe try and push for top half. Probably won't happen now. Fingers crossed Dom Solanke gets in the England squad. That's like the icing on the cake for the rest of our season, sort of thing. Because right now it's sort of like, what's there left to play for? Not a lot. But what I will say is that it's actually exciting going to Bournemouth games at the moment, which it hadn't been for a good 3-4 seasons. So this is something that we are very much enjoying with the new manager.
Yeah, interesting. Before we get further into the show, I just want to remind you all that this episode of the pre-game show is sponsored by Green King Sport, where football is more than a game. Green King Sport venues are showing every single televised Burnley fixture over the 23-24 season, obviously including Sunday, which will be broadcast live, so you can watch it at every single Green King Sport venue. And with more than 900 sports pubs across the UK, it doesn't matter where you're based, you can watch every single minute of the action. And a reminder that if you download the Green King Sports app, you won't just get 10% off all drinks anytime there's a match on the TV, but this month there's also thousands of pints of free Guinness to be won and a chance to win one of 6 holidays. So it's definitely worth checking out. It's interesting that you mentioned there, John, that you weren't finding it entertaining going to Bournemouth games over the last 3 or 4 seasons, because within them 3 or 4 seasons has seen a promotion and something that we are desperate to have. A survival in the Premier League. I had a bit of a brain fart then. I couldn't think of it. But we are finding it very tedious this season, trying to play football in a certain way, but just getting battered every single week. And I mean it with the greatest of respect to Crystal Palace, but they are average. Like, don't get me wrong, we'd love to be average. We're dreadful. But they made an absolute meal of us at the weekend. They destroyed us far too easily. And even though everything you've just mentioned, like your form's down back a little bit, you haven't had a league win in 2024. Don't worry, mate. Same. Still, not many Burnley fans are going into this one confident. So yeah, I do find it a little bit bizarre that you've said that, but I guess that's a style of play thing between Areola and O'Neill.
Yeah, absolutely. But to be fair, it's not just O'Neill. It wouldn't be right for me to single out O'Neill at all, because O'Neill was, before you can say anything else about O'Neill, he was a success, regardless of whatever Bournemouth fan. No Bournemouth fan wishes O'Neill anything other than success in his role at Wolves. I honestly don't see how any of us could. But it was the case of, you had Gary O'Neill. Before you had Scott Parker. Before that was Woodgate on a temporary basis, and before that was Jason Tindall, who wasn't all that good either. Were all really, there was nothing all that special about the style of play. It was all rather negative, particularly with Scott Parker and Gary O'Neill. Even in the promotion-winning season, it wasn't great football under Scott Parker. It was fine, and to be fair, Bournemouth had like easily one of the top 2 squads in the division for that season. And there's a lot of Bournemouth fans looked at it as like, we almost went up in spite of Scott Parker at times in that season. And it was a very much like, you scored the first goal, right, let's just sort of see that out now. I really do think that if Scott Parker had the choice, he would have just taken a 1-0 before every single game. And it's not fun. It's what Burnley had when you went through your promotion season was very entertaining football under Vincent Kompany, and what you've got now with Leicester, with Leeds, these teams that have struggled at the bottom end of the Prem, as many do, are going through fantastic seasons of really attacking, entertaining football. And Bournemouth didn't really get that with Scott Parker. We got winning football and we got a few good games, but most performances were very by the books. And with O'Neill, it was again very defense first, an incredibly counter-attacking system that didn't really get many chances, but the chances they got tended to be pretty high quality ones. Having said that, statistically, you want to take almost every single attacking and defensive stat you can throw at it Forest and Bournemouth were the worst two teams last season, and yet we somehow stayed up. And I can't really tell you how, but we did. We somehow stayed up, and this season has just been so much more entertaining. Just in all round, every time I watch a Bournemouth game, I'm so confident that I'm going to see a really aggressive, a really high pressing side. They're going to be on the front foot, which is something Bournemouth fans are used to for decades. Of even when they were in League One and League Two, they'd still be a front foot team, and it's entertaining to watch. The midfield are confident on the ball. The defense work the ball well. You've got form attackers in the likes of Solanke. You've got Sinistera and others that really can do something going forward. And it hasn't been perfect at all. More recently, some players have struggled, but it has been good to watch for the most part. There's been a few games here and there. The defeat against Liverpool was not great, but even the 3-1 loss, which I went to on New Year's Eve away to Spurs, was not a 3-1 game. And we were really quite good in that match, but we got picked off the counter. But we looked like on every really angle, we looked the match for Spurs in a lot of ways. And that's just so encouraging to see, even despite the defeat. And yeah, it gives me so much confidence that after another year of football, because I don't see us going down now. After a full season, another pre-season, couple more players, like top half finish is something that I think a lot of Bournemouth fans will be looking for next season because of how much they rate the team doing under this manager.
Yeah, you alluded to it at the start of the show and kind of alluded to like how well you've done since then. But obviously, at the start of the show, we gave you your first win. Early in the season, we gave you your first win. We actually went in front, then just got battered like we tend to do every single game these days. But what's the difference between that first 6, 7, 8 games or whatever it was before you played us and then the games after it? Obviously not including the last 4 or 5 because, as you said, your form has dropped off. But why were you so much better? Was it just you needed that win to give you the confidence?
Absolutely, yeah. Because I do think that it really was a case of you did give us that win as well, which I think was probably one of the frustrating things about that from a Burnley's perspective. On that one,
we've done it a lot of times this season
because we didn't look like scoring the winning goal in that game, because it was like we certainly looked to the slightly better team from memory, but it wasn't a massive difference. Your goal obviously through it just felt at the time so typical that Charlie Taylor, that hasn't scored a goal in a decade or however long it was, picks up, just lashes it in from outside the box on the volley from a corner, and then Semenyo scores a really nice goal, but he nicks it off Taylor in the build-up as part of the high press, and then billing it to goal through hitting it from just inside your half after nicking it off a poor pass from the right back, I believe it was.
Classic.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like both were very avoidable from a Burnley perspective, and for Bournemouth, we just needed that. We just needed something to go our way because, it was quite a few of the games were just that we build up to before that were the small things that just didn't quite happen for us in one area or another. Like we lost 3-1 to Brighton. We were absolutely battered them in the first half, but right at the end of the first half, a really unfortunate own goal where it's just like a shot that's not going anywhere or a cross that's going out. It just nicks off the defender and just pokes it past the goalkeeper. And then they score within 30 seconds of the second half. And suddenly 1-0 lead's gone 2-1 and we lose that one. And then this was the game where something actually happened and went our way. And it just was that little bit of confidence that I think the squad needed to be like, okay, no, this high pressing system really can work. Because it did help that we obviously won the ball off you twice in your own half and then scored from that. So then, when the games then push on from there, there's so much more in the squad to be able to have the confidence to say things would work well. We then go to Man City straight after that and lose 6-1, which I actually think was up until a week ago when we lost 1-0 to them at home. That 6-1 loss was probably the best performance we'd ever had against Man City. They were just ridiculously clinical, and it was that Doku show when he scored 1 and assisted 4. But then we play Newcastle, a weak Newcastle. We take advantage of that and we comfortably beat them 2-1. We go to Sheffield United and we start hitting some winnable games, and suddenly it all pushes forward, culminating in beating Man United 3-0 at theirs, which was history-making for us, which was fantastic. But going into that game, I was very confident. I wish I should have put money on it because I was so confident that we were going to at least get a point from that game. And really, I thought we would win, and we did. So it really did need that first win to build confidence in the squad and the players to know what the manager wants from us will get us results. Because after 8 or 9 weeks of it not, the players will have started to doubt it. But then suddenly they had the confidence for it.
Yeah, like you say, it's typical Burnley that. Like, we handed the win to you, which we've done several times this season. Palace twice, West Ham. I can think of so many examples where teams haven't had to break sweat to beat us, and it's interesting giving your perspective on that win and how we felt we were two quite evenly matched teams. You were perhaps slightly better, but then we kind of threw it away, which is just how we felt all season. Obviously, you mentioned earlier that there's not a lot to play for you guys now because top half is probably achievable, but it may or may not be, and you don't think you're going down. Obviously, you've been concentrating on the Leicester game this week. Obviously, you went out to Leicester last night in the FA Cup after extra time. Could you have just took your foot off the gas a little ahead of this game and maybe been focusing on the FA Cup, or do you think main thing has still been the Premier League?
I'm sure the manager will have said that it's Premier League survival is still the main priority for the season. But I do think that when you look at some of the sides that were out of the cup and that we were playing a team, even if they are doing very well in the championship, at top of the championship in Leicester, winning that game would have gotten us one match away from Wembley. And we had a decent chance of playing quite a few teams that are not part of the big 6 or 7. Heck, even getting Newcastle wouldn't have been a bad draw in the next round. Obviously, they just about got past Blackburn, but it was a very tight game. And the big issue that we had in that game was we just couldn't get our shots on target properly. I think we had, I can't remember the stats, but I think we only had 4 shots on target out of about 27. 20 odd shots that I think it was about 4 on target, and in extra time I think we had 9 shots, none of which were on target. It's just that was the very clear issue, and it has been scoring goals in the last few weeks that has been the bigger problem. It doesn't really help that your main man Dom Solanke has been nursing a knee injury for a little while and they decided to rest him for this match, so he's not available. The guy that you brought in to replace him as your second striker, Unal, he gets a shoulder injury and goes off at half time. And after that, you don't really have a dedicated number 9 on the pitch. And it really showed. We had good play up until the final third, and then it just fell apart, which is the concern going into this game, that if they decide Solanke's not able to play, and we might not have our second choice striker, the next best option is probably Semenyo as the number 9, and he's been playing as a winger all season, and he's not quite in that. He's not set in that position. It's not been his role, and it doesn't look like it suits him at the moment, even though he has played as a 9 in the past for Bristol City and has done it occasionally for us. So that's the big concern at the moment, is scoring goals, because in terms of being able to control the ball and dominate possession, I do think the defensive midfield has gotten better and better at that through the season. I think we did that for 60% of the Leicester game, but just couldn't hit the backside of a barn door with a banjo. It was just really, really poor show of finishing from all of our attackers. So I'm hoping something changes in the next few games. It will at some point. The sooner the better, because we've got a decent run of fixtures coming up. And you want to be able to take advantage of that when you've got it.
Well, don't worry, mate. We leak goals for fun. I think we are that we've conceded the second most in the league. Only conceded only kept 2 clean sheets this season. You mentioned Solanke there. It would be amiss of me to. I do want to ask other questions and stuff. But it'd be amiss of me not to poke on that one. What's the situation with him then? Because obviously, we realise that we're pretty dreadful at the back. We realise that Bournemouth are a different animal with Solanke than they are without Solanke. So we obviously hope that he misses the game. I know he missed, like you said, that the Leicester game, but I mean, you'll know more than me, but I felt it was more a case of just resting him because he's had a bit of an injury, but he's probably going to be fine for the weekend. Is that the vibe that you're getting?
I think it probably will be. I imagine he will probably feature in the match, and that this was an opportunity more to rest him because he wasn't a necessity to play, and we did want to start Unal. But from what has since come out is that he's been nursing this knee injury since the Spurs game, which was on New Year's Eve. And I do remember in that game him getting quite a nasty tackle and staying down for a bit. But then he continued with the match. And this is the case with a lot of professional footballers. They're often carrying niggles or some sort of injury, and they get their injections to take them through it and whatnot. But it's not ideal, and it has looked at times in the last few weeks that Solanke hasn't quite been on it in the same way that it has in previous months. So I'd still expect him to feature, but the fact that they sort of made it aware that we're not going to use him at all in this game, despite the fact that there was a very high chance that he would probably be needed if we had been involved, even from the bench, because Leicester are a very good side. The fact that we didn't decide to put him in the matchday squad at all, I think told a bit more that maybe there's a little bit more worry in here than we'd like. But I mean, like you mentioned, the other option is that it's just a case of resting him up. He'll be involved going forward as long as nothing gets any worse. And that's what we're all hoping for, and certainly from a Bournemouth side of things anyway.
I was going to say, I would not like to echo them saying, I hope he's fine. I do like him as a player. I don't wish a nasty injury on anybody. But maybe just a niggle that keeps him out for another week, please. I do want to ask, obviously, about Vincent Kompany and Burnley this season. Obviously, there's a lot of noise pretty much outside the club about why Vincent isn't being criticised as much as somebody else would. I mean, I'll tell you now, it's because he's called Vincent Kompany. I still want him in, which a lot of fans will agree with me, but there's a louder and louder section of fans now that do want him out. But again, we're trying to have, as I'm sure you've mentioned, I'm sure you're aware, we're trying to have an identity and a plan. And if we obviously get rid of him and bring in somebody like Wilder, and not that they would, because obviously he's at Sheffield United now, but that completely gets rid of the plan and the identity that we want to achieve. So what are your thoughts on Burnley that looking to stick by Vincent Kompany despite such a horrendous season, which could essentially see us as one of the worst Premier League sides of all time?
Yeah, I think that Kompany has been very naive. Is certainly how I would say in terms of the plans. It's partly, I'd imagine, due to the ownership as well. Because when you go up into a new league, particularly one as competitive as the Premier League, and as much as the teams that have just come down from the Prem aren't all that much worse than the teams at the bottom are still at the bottom of the Premier League, like Leicester in their resources and whatnot. Look at Leeds, and there are others that are they're not far away from being at the same level of the teams at the bottom of the Prem. You can't take a style that is essentially trying to be Man City in the Premier in the Championship and then still think you can be Man City in the Premier League. With the same ideas. Even, you look at Eddie Howe kind of did it when coming up with Bournemouth, but he was still quite gung-ho, but things are very different now, obviously, compared to a decade ago. Look at, I'd say more so Brentford and what Thomas Frank went from quite a ball-dominant, progressive side in the Championship and then just decided, no, that's not going to work, so I'm going to completely shut up shop and switch to a back five, and we're just going to stay up for 2 seasons and then we'll push on. Whereas trying to be that incredibly dominant ball playing side and taking that into the Premier League as you have done with a completely different squad as well, which was the thing that sort of surprised me so much. Is that the one thing that when you look at when Nottingham Forest came up, they completely refreshed their squad, but they had to because they had so many loan players, and that was kind of like, okay, that's fine. But they also had quite a defensive style, and they still did up until they sacked Cooper. You look at Bournemouth, we kept pretty much the entirety of the squad with one or two changes, but we also stayed very defensive and we shut up shop. Not a massive style difference, but relatively similar squad. You maintain that cohesion. Luton, I think, struck a nice balance between keeping the squad and bringing in a bunch of new players, but mixing it in quite a lot. It felt very weird that Burnley went and made such a significant squad change, but also bringing in mostly youngsters, which it can't, like, okay, you'll get the odd moment where a team comes through and does something that's completely against the grain and it works, but it's a hell of a roll of the dice. That's that's going for 00 on the roulette. It'll come up, but it's just like you're not gonna get that very often. And having a good mix of experience is so important in a relegation season, because how many of those players have gone through in your squad have gone through a relegation fighting season? And I imagine, particularly most of the youngsters, will not have experienced anything close to this. The struggle and the difficulty of having to survive and having to just grab points whenever you can, knowing you're going to lose a lot of the weeks. It's such a difficult position to be in, and it requires a guiding hand from, if the manager hasn't done it before, you certainly need the players that can help him out. And you've just got nothing. You've just got none of that. You've got none of that support. There's enough quality there, but it's bringing it out. It is very difficult, and I do think that it's kind of, while there was a lot of promise, I think it was pretty evident quite early on where the writing was on the wall for how you were going about this season. And while you could be somewhat supportive and say, okay, Kompany is stuck by his values, it was never going to work unless he sort of pragmatized somewhat, and he's just clearly not willing to do that. I think that if you are, I would say it's sensible to stick with him now, I would say, because purely, like, as I think most Burnley fans are probably given up on the season at this point, it's unlikely that you're going to stay up. But there would be no point in sacking him now and changing the manager. I feel like you might as well go back down. You've clearly got a squad capable of coming straight back up again. So develop all these players for another year. Have that great season in the Championship again, where you're dominating games and enjoying the football. But then Kompany has got to actually wise up a bit the following season when you come back up and realize he needs more than just what works in the Championship, because they are two pretty different leagues.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. We did have 5 loans last season, so we did have quite a lot of loans, but I do feel like, we prioritised, the wrong ones. You could say that obviously Martson didn't want to come, and we tried our best to have Teller to come, but they didn't come. And it's unfortunate for us that we then signed youngsters. Well, not unfortunate, because obviously they tried to do it that way, but for fans, because obviously they've done it, in my opinion, the wrong way. Yes, I think we'll get the benefit of these youngsters eventually, but now we're just obviously going to get relegated from the Prem, and that's going to be that. So yeah, it's interesting. And as for Vincent, yeah, I agree. I think he needs to learn from his mistakes. And although I do want to stick by him, as I've said, I need to see him learning from his mistakes. And I do feel like if we're just going to get spanked 3-4-0 off you, and then again the week after, I don't even know, I'm not looking that far ahead anymore, but we're just getting beat 3-0 all the time. And eventually it will become untenable. So if we get beat 3-0 against you, and he's playing Trafford in goal again, and he's playing Zeki Amdouni there, both of which have contributed nothing but negative stuff to the season so far, then that could be that. That could be the fans like myself who want him in, but kind of sitting on the fence, turning. I don't think I will turn, but we'll see. But it's going to be interesting to see what we do. But yeah, I agree. We have to go down, not reinvent ourselves, but regroup, do what we did, go back up. Hopefully, I agree. I feel we have a decent squad, and then kick on, and hopefully we can reap the benefits the year after that. Before we get to predictions and stuff, though, I just want to remind everybody that Burnley sleeve sponsor for the 23-24 season are about to unveil something special. The limited edition Burnley FC Uphold card, set to launch soon. You can easily add funds to your card and unlock its perks whether you're spending at home or away. The card lets you spend money in any currency, anywhere in the world. It's accepted everywhere. MasterCard is, without foreign transaction fees, and offers a competitive exchange rate for added ease and security. You can pay with Apple or Google Play. Right, John, predictions then. There's not many. I feel weird about this one. Like, I'm feeling different because you are clearly the better side. But there's something about the fact that I feel like the fans are turning that might just kick us into gear. And it's the delusion setting in again, because you're probably going to beat us 2-3-0 like everybody else has done. But I don't know, maybe, fingers crossed, Solanke does miss the game, but then he's back, because obviously I don't wish injury on anybody. And then we just kick on from there, and hopefully we get a win. I don't think we'll stop up. But I'm going to predict 2-1, to Burnley. But you can see that I don't really believe that. It's bizarre. It's the delusion. I'm just kind of hoping that we do. But it's tough. It's tough. What about you, mate?
I'll probably go for the same scoreline, but just for the other way around. I do think that my concern is not that we'll make chances, because I do think that, given Burnley's desire to play out from the back and their staunch ways of making sure that they always do that, just suits the way that we want to play down to a T, because we want you to try and play around with the ball at the back and nick it off you and create chances. The frustration has been that we're not finishing them, but I think that we'll probably get enough chances that we'll definitely put 1 or 2 away. And then, in terms of just that we haven't been keeping clean sheets very much, so I really wouldn't be surprised if we concede a goal. But I do think that we should certainly be going into this game with a lot of confidence that, regardless of the form, there have been enough good halves of football that I think we can definitely get a win out of this game.
Yeah, like I said, I'm only predicting Burnley to win simply because the Leicester game as well in midweek. I'm kind of hoping obviously going to extra time as well. There's a few things that, if we were a half decent side, would work in our favour. But I've seen no evidence to suggest that we are going to be a half decent side on Sunday, obviously. But Kompany needs to make some ballsy changes for this game. He needs to drop Trafford. He's not been good enough. He made a mistake again on the weekend. It seems to be every single week now. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I do think he will be a good keeper, and I do think we will make our money back and make a bit of profit on him eventually. Just for now, he's not ready. We should have bought him in, had Muric as number one, loaned him out to somebody in the Championship and let him develop from there. But at least next season, with us in the Championship, he will get a decent season of development playing Championship football like Muric did last year. But John, we'll wrap it up there, because, as I have said, I do need to start working about 9 minutes. But before I do you want to let everyone know where they can find you and your content if they want to digest any of it?
Yeah, we're Cherries Red Army on YouTube, on Instagram and Twitter. With the channel, in terms of YouTube videos, is on a little bit of hiatus at the moment. But we're not stopping. It is just on pause at the moment, and we'll be back with more videos, I'm sure, before the end of the season, and certainly going into the next one.
Yeah, fair enough. Sometimes you just need a break, don't you? I remember having one halfway through last season, and despite the season being class, I just thought, it's too much.
Yeah.
I would love a break at this stage now, but I've got a couple of sponsors and I can't stop. So now I'm doing it for the fans, obviously, number one, but because I'm contractually obliged to, because the season has been so miserable. But John, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's always good to have you on. Really good, balanced opinions, and pretty much hit the nail on the head with Burnley, to be honest. And to say you're a fan of a South Coast club, all them miles away. I think I remember from you telling me earlier you don't live on the South Coast anymore.
No, I live in Manchester now, so I will actually be getting to the. I'll be getting to the Burnley game because it's not far away. So yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I hope you enjoy your weekend, mate. Just not between 1 and 3 o'clock on Sunday. But thanks for coming on the show. Good luck for the rest of the season, mate. But after Sunday.
No worries. Cheers. Thanks again for having me on.